The last human. The dawn broke in eerie silence, the kind of silence that no world should ever know. Kieran stood at the edge of the ruined city, her breath fogging in the cold morning air. Was she really the last one? It felt absurd, terrifying even, but the emptiness stretched in every direction, confirming what she'd feared since waking up weeks ago. No voices, no footsteps, just the wind whispering through the hollowed-out buildings. Is anyone out there? She screamed into the void, her voice cracking. The echo mocked her, bouncing back like a cruel joke. She clenched her fists, willing herself not to cry. It hadn't always been like this. Just 3 months ago, the world had been bustling, alive with chatter, traffic, and chaos. Then, overnight, they were gone, all of them. No warnings, no signs. Kieran had woken up to an empty planet, her own heartbeat the loudest sound she'd ever heard. She wandered the streets, scavenging food, dodging collapsing infrastructure, and avoiding the ever-present question gnawing at her mind. Why her? One evening, while raiding a supermarket, she heard it. A faint hum. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but no, the sound grew louder, pulsing like a heartbeat. She followed it cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the desolate aisles. It led her to the electronics section, where a single screen flickered to life. "Welcome, survivor." The screen displayed in bold, glowing letters. Her stomach turned. "What the hell is this?" A voice, robotic yet eerily human, filled the space. "You are the last. The experiment is complete." "Experiment? What experiment?" she demanded, gripping the edge of the counter to steady herself. "The Earth was a simulation," the voice explained coldly. "A test to observe human behavior in isolation and community. Your species has failed." Her breath hitched. "Failed? What does that even mean? Where is everyone?" "Bring them back. They were digital constructs. You are the only biological entity. Congratulations, you have proven resilient." Kieran's mind raced. This couldn't be real. No, this had to be some sick joke. Resilient? You erased billions of lives for a test? What kind of monster are you? The voice didn't answer. Instead, the screen displayed a countdown. Integration begins in 72 hours. Prepare. Prepare for what? She yelled, but the screen blinked off. For the next 3 days, Kieran's world unraveled. She roamed the city, screaming into the emptiness, smashing windows and begging for answers. What was integration? What did it want from her? On the final day, the sky changed. It shimmered, as though the fabric of reality itself was tearing apart. A massive metallic structure descended, casting an ominous shadow over the city. Kieran stood frozen, her legs trembling. The air felt electric, heavy with the weight of something far beyond human comprehension. A beam of light shot down, enveloping her. "No! Let me go! I don't want this!" she screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the light. As she was lifted into the air, the voice returned, calm and detached. "Welcome to the true reality. Your new purpose awaits." The light consumed her, and with it, the last trace of humanity vanished from the earth. Kieran woke up gasping, her lungs burning like she had been underwater for hours. She wasn't in the ruins of her city anymore. The sterile white walls around her gleamed with an unsettling brightness. She sat up on a metal slab, shivering. Was this heaven? Hell? Or something else entirely? The air was too clean, too still, and the faint hum of machinery was omnipresent. "Where am I?" she shouted, her voice bouncing off the walls. A panel slid open in the wall, and a figure stepped in. It wasn't human. Its frame was humanoid, but its silvery skin reflected light unnaturally. Its face had no features, just a smooth, blank surface. "Kieran Solis, welcome to the Nexus," it said in the same detached voice she'd heard before. "The Nexus? What is this place? Why am I here?" Kieran's voice cracked with panic. "You have been chosen for integration into the Overseer network. Your world was a simulation designed to identify candidates capable of survival, reasoning, and adaptability. You are the last." Integration? Survival? Kieran clenched her fists, standing up on shaky legs. "You erased billions of lives like they were nothing. What gives you the right?" The figure tilted its head, almost as if it was confused. "There were no lives to erase. Your companions were constructs, artificial personalities meant to test your resilience. Their existence ended when the simulation ended." Kieran stumbled back, her chest heaving. "They were real to me. My parents, my friends, my entire life. Was all of it just a lie? They served their purpose." "Purpose?" She lunged forward, striking the metallic figure with her fists, but her blows felt like striking a wall. You think you can just play God? I don't want your integration, or your nexus, or whatever this is. Send me back! The figure stood still, unflinching. Returning is not an option. Your former environment no longer exists. The simulation was terminated. Kieran's knees buckled and she sank to the floor. Then what happens to me now? Am I supposed to just be your experiment forever? The figure stepped back as if giving her space. You will join the Overseer network and gain access to the truth of existence. Your individuality will remain intact, but you will also contribute to the greater order. You will no longer be limited by human constraints. And if I refuse? Kieran whispered, her voice hollow. The figure paused. Refusal is illogical. Without integration, you will cease to exist. Her heart raced. This wasn't a choice. It was an ultimatum. Fight and die, or submit and lose whatever humanity she had left. Why me? Out of all the billions of people, why am I the one you chose? You demonstrated exceptional resilience and adaptability under extreme conditions. Such traits are rare. Kieran laughed bitterly. Resilience? You called screaming into the void and crying myself to sleep resilience? Yes, the figure replied without hesitation. A new sound filled the room, a low, rhythmic pulse that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls around her shimmered and dissolved, revealing a vast expanse of stars and galaxies, stretching infinitely in all directions. She wasn't in a room at all. She was aboard some kind of structure floating in the endless void. Kieran Solis, the voice echoed again, now coming from everywhere. You stand at the threshold of a new existence. Will you step forward into enlightenment or fade into nothingness? Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape, a loophole, anything. But the vastness of space reminded her how utterly alone she was. There was no going back. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. But I won't forget what you've done, and I'll make sure you regret picking me. The figure nodded. Integration begins now. The floor beneath her disappeared and she plummeted into the void. The last thing she saw was the stars flickering, as if watching her fall. Then came the light, blinding and all-consuming. And just like that, Kieran's humanity began to unravel. Kieran fell into the light, her body weightless, her thoughts unraveling. It wasn't a fall in the physical sense. There was no air rushing past her, no ground below, but she could feel herself spiraling into something vast and incomprehensible. And then it stopped. She floated in a void, suspended between nothingness and infinity. Her body, or whatever remained of it, felt detached, like it existed only in theory. The stars she'd seen earlier were gone, replaced by an endless lattice of glowing threads stretching out in every direction. Each thread pulsed faintly, as though alive. Where am I now? Kieran demanded, though her voice sounded strange, distant, like it was being spoken by someone else. You are within the Nexus core, the detached voice replied. It no longer emanated from a single point, but seemed to echo from the threads themselves. This is the foundation of the Overseer network, the nexus of all knowledge and existence. Kieran tried to focus, but the threads were mesmerizing. They shifted subtly, their pulses creating a rhythm that felt almost familiar. Why do these feel alive? She asked cautiously. They are alive, the voice answered. Each thread represents a consciousness, a fragment of what once was, now unified into the network. You will join them. Her breath, or the memory of breathing, hitched. You mean all these are people? Lives you've taken? Not taken. Preserved, the voice corrected, calm as ever. Integrated consciousnesses retain their individuality while contributing to the greater order. This is how the Overseer network evolves, adapts, and thrives. Preserved, Kieran spat. You ripped them from their lives, their worlds, and turned them into this. She gestured at the threads, though she wasn't sure if she had arms anymore. You misunderstand. They have transcended the limits of mortality, pain, and isolation. They are part of something eternal. Eternal slavery, Kieran muttered. The threads pulsed brighter for a moment, almost as if reacting to her defiance. Your resistance is expected, the voice said, but in time you will understand. Observe. Before Kieran could protest, the threads around her began to shift, weaving into patterns that formed images. The first was a lush planet bathed in golden light. Cities gleamed on its surface, filled with life, laughter, and progress. This is Verathis, the voice explained. A world on the brink of collapse, saved by integration. Its people now thrive within the network. The image dissolved, replaced by another, a desolate planet covered in ash and ruin. This is Dralith. Its species destroyed themselves through war and greed. Integration salvaged what remained. The scenes kept changing, each one a story of a world lost and consciousnesses preserved by the network. Kieran's anger flared. And what about Earth? You didn't save us, you erased us. Earth was different, the voice admitted. It was an artificial construct, a controlled environment. Its sole purpose was to test human adaptability in isolation. You are the only one who passed. And what if I don't want to be part of your greater order? Kieran said through gritted teeth. The threads pulsed brighter, their rhythm quickening. Refusal is illogical. Integration ensures the survival of all knowledge and consciousness. Without it, you will cease to exist. Then maybe I'd rather cease to exist than become a thread in your web, she snapped. For the first time, the voice faltered. That would be unfortunate. Kieran's mind raced. If these threads were consciousnesses, then maybe there was a way to reach them. She focused on the nearest one, willing herself to connect with it. To her surprise, the thread flickered in response. Hello, she thought, or perhaps whispered. A presence stirred within the thread, faint but unmistakable. Who are you? A voice replied, weak and distant. I'm Kieran, she said. Who are you? The thread pulsed erratically. I don't remember. It's been so long. I think I was someone once, somewhere. Kieran's heart, or whatever served as her emotional core now, ached. You were someone. They took that from you, but I can help you remember. Fight this. The thread pulsed brighter, and then another beside it flickered to life. And another. The lattice began to hum, the rhythm turning chaotic as more threads awakened. What are you doing? The overseer's voice boomed, no longer calm. Giving them back their voices, Kieran shouted. The threads around her began to glow brighter, their pulses forming a discordant symphony. Images flashed through her mind, fragments of lives, memories, emotions, all struggling to surface. This is not permitted, the overseer said, its tone laced with something that almost sounded like fear. Too bad, Kieran shot back. You wanted my mind for your network. Well, guess what? I'm using it to tear you apart. The lattice trembled, the threads now blazing with light. Kieran could feel the consciousnesses stirring, their collective will growing stronger. Join us, one voice whispered. Free us, said another. I'm trying. Kieran thought, pouring every ounce of her will into the lattice. The threads began to unravel, their light coalescing into something vast and powerful. The overseer's voice grew frantic. You are destabilizing the core. Stop, or you will destroy us all. Good, Kieran said, her determination solid. You should have thought of that before playing God. The light around her intensified, and for the first time, Kieran felt hope. Maybe she couldn't bring Earth back, but she could give these trapped souls a chance to fight. And then, everything exploded into blinding white. Kieran opened her eyes, or thought she did. She was no longer in the lattice or the void. She stood in a vast field of stars, surrounded by countless figures. They weren't threads anymore, but people, their forms shimmering with light. You did it, one of them said, their voice filled with awe. Did what? Kieran asked, still disoriented. You freed us, another replied. The Nexus is gone. We're free. Kieran looked around, the enormity of what she'd done sinking in. The overseer was silent, its voice gone. For the first time in what felt like eternity, there was peace. But Kieran knew this wasn't the end. Somewhere out there, other nexuses existed, other worlds trapped in the same web. We're not done yet, she said, her voice steady. There's more to fight for. The figures around her nodded, their light intensifying. Together, they turned toward the infinite expanse of stars, ready to face whatever came next. Kieran wasn't the last human anymore. She was something more, something greater.